Going? Okay. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Fairy Friends. I'm Amber,
I'm Kenzie.
and hope everybody's doing great today. Today we're going to start off, I think, starting with Kenzie's story. I think we've had a couple episodes and that have just kind of been all over the place. We thought we kind of would bring it back to circle and kind of let you know who we are and where we are and what made us start this, how we met, all that good stuff. And yeah. So, Ken, tell us
Hi.
about you.
Hi.
Do we want to pull a couple cards before we start?
Yeah, I feel like that's
Should
probably
we
a good thing.
should we pull some cards before we just jump into it? Okay.
Yeah, because this is gonna be dark, a dark episode.
So strap in, which is interesting because the first card I pulled, because I went ahead and pulled from the fairy gems.
Yeah.
And so let's start with some fairy gems because we need some fairy magic around us today. And the card that I pulled was smoky quartz. So
Mm.
that's kind of interesting because it's kind of, the dark and the light,
Hmm.
So I feel like that's kind of interesting that you're because you're such light, but then like it's this dark journey of where you got to your light. So I feel like that's really kind of interesting. And the smoky quartz is it's signifiers. God, what are words? God, I always struggle with words. Grounding, ancient wisdom, calm, protection. Yeah. The smoky quartz fairy is a creature of gentle but profound energy, often appearing like a wisp of smoke when you need grounding in your life. Smoky quartz fairies are also often healers who cast fine gray nets to extract toxins and then fill the void that remains with sweet, gentle, cleansing energy. Well, I feel like that just describes me with my Reiki. That's kind of what I do with my Reiki.
Yeah. Healing shit.
Yeah. I love that. Clearing that shit out, dusting it off, and bringing in the new.
So I pulled a couple of cards and I kind of laughed with the first card that came out because of what we talked about before. Uh,
Uh-huh.
discernment. I'm going to be leaving some of my story out just because I have a lot going on in my life right now that, like, this information just doesn't need to be out there. I don't
Yeah.
know. So just keep that in mind. And then,
We'll,
huh?
we'll be telling bits of our pieces. Nope. Bits and pieces of our stories
Bits
as
of
we
our
go.
pieces.
That too, whatever details. We'll be telling bits and pieces of our story as we go. And there's places that we are not quite ready to touch on yet, or there's still moving pieces involved or moving or people involved that we just can't get into it or touch on, but at some point we will circle back around.
Yeah, it's
And
like
there's
still
just some things we're just not
live
ready to
happening.
share yet.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
and
just,
there's stuff. Ooh, the AC just came on. Is that really loud?
you can't even hear it.
No. Oh, yay. That's amazing. Okay. Yeah. So there'll be things that we'll circle back around on. So what was that other card?
This one is kind of like what you just pulled, healing energy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I thought, so I one thing that you guys will hear in my story is that, like, I got sober in 2014 through a 12-step program, and it's always been very healing for me to tell my story. So that's kind of what I thought about. It's just like sharing my experience. They always say in the 12-step program, sharing your experience, strength, and hope. And the experience is all the dark shit, and then the strength and hope is obviously like the healing aspects of what has happened since getting sober. But like, I'm not going to focus on the sobriety part. I mean, it is a big part of my story, don't get me wrong, but like, for this podcast, it's not about sobriety, it's about my awakening. And I do think that my sobriety played like a really big role in my awakening because I did have some profound spiritual experiences early on. Um, but it's not the main part.
Also, it will be, yeah, and it will be talked about a little bit more than anticipated, probably, just because Ken's is also a backbone for me in an experience of life that I'm going through and dealing with an addict in my family and dealing with that. And some of the realizations or coming to's of the situation and whatnot. Um, we will kind of discuss. And so Kenzie kind of helps give me a different light and a different understanding and a different perspective of things that I feel could probably be helpful to other people that might be kind of struggling and going with it through some of this too. Um, so it's not going to be a focus, but it's going to be intertwined with our journey and where we are and how we see and view things now that we're more open and we're more spiritual and we see more things and we have a better understanding versus how we saw and dealt and understood things, 5, 10 years ago. And,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. I guess we can just get started, right?
Yeah.
Um, my teeth look really weird in this video. That's fine. I'm just not gonna worry about it.
You're fine. It's fine. We're all fine.
One thing that you'll find out about me right now is I'm working through a lot of like self-love stuff at the moment. So I'm like very hyper conscious. Anyways, um, so I guess starting out young, I grew up in a family that was like my grandparents were very religious. My mom, well, my mom's parents went to church every Sunday. Tried to, they didn't like shove religion down our throat, but they definitely shoved religion down my mom's throat.
Mhm.
And so and then my mom had like a lot of experiences with religious trauma. And so when she had us, she didn't force religion down our throat. She did try to bring us to church. She tried to find her spiritual practice, but like it just would fizzle out. And then my dad's parents were very religious as well. My grandma went to church every Sunday when my grandfather was alive, and I'll talk a little bit about him today too. But like when my grandfather was alive, he, at least in my life, he wasn't able to walk anymore due to his smoking. He had emphysema and like lost a bunch of nerve endings in his legs, so he wasn't able to walk
Mhm.
anymore, and so he stopped
Mhm.
going to church. Um, the only time he ever really left the house was for doctor's offices, to go to the doctor's office. But my grandma on my dad's side was a lot more forceful with religion on me. Um, and it was a really big turnoff for me. I didn't have like a lot of religious trauma. It was just like the understandings I had of religion didn't make sense to me.
The
Um,
beliefs
yeah,
of
the
what it
beliefs.
is and the programming of how you're supposed to behave and what you're
Mhm.
supposed to obtain and how you're supposed to go through life. It's the
Yeah,
putting you creating you to be put in that box.
yeah, pretty much. And like from a very young age, I was convinced that like I was gonna go to hell. Like
Mhm.
I didn't have that like goody two shoes, wanting to go to church every day, wanting to like bring Jesus into my heart, all this kind of shit. So like I thought I'm gonna go to hell. And there's no real point in trying to be a better person because that's where I'm going. And
Mhm.
I think there was a part of me that knew that something was taken from me from a very early age that like I could never get back. And I'll talk about that probably right now. Um, ish. But like, anyways, so my parents got divorced when I was 3.5. But it was very toxic before that and after that. Lots of fighting, screaming, throwing shit at each other. And I witnessed that as a kid. And
Mm-hmm.
so growing up, I thought that was normal for a
Mm-hmm.
relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's just how people fought, right? And so when my parents remarried, I was 5 and 6, I think, but they like met their significant others like 2 years before that. So they got married
Right.
pretty quickly, you know. Um, it was just like I was kind of thrown to the wolves very early on. And I think a lot of people listening might have that same experience. It's just very early age uh, emotional trauma of not understanding what's going on and just being like tossed back and forth between a parent and then on top of that, like my parents were not mature enough to just have a normal conversation about parenthood and about
Mm-hmm.
raising the kids. So like
Mm-hmm.
it it became a, like they would just scream at each other. And then when I got
They didn't know how to communicate. They didn't like
no.
they just didn't. And it's very interesting for any of you guys that haven't figured it out yet. I am the same age as Kenzie's parents, basically. I think they might be a little bit older than me, but Kenzie is the same age as my oldest child. So, I understand where they're coming from. We weren't taught, we weren't given the tools how to communicate. Like, I'm glad that I can talk to my kids now about what a freaking train wreck of a parent I was, and like if I'd known and if I'd had the tools. So yeah, it was a very hard time, and it's because our generation was raised in such a train wreck and was raised in such chaos. And it's like, I think that it's your guys' generation that you are finally figuring out, oh, we don't have to live in that chaos. We don't have to live
Mhm.
in that crazy. Like that's not the normal. That's a choice. You can step out of that.
Right.
Um, so yeah, I mean, it's yeah, it's so to the parents' defenses and all of the parents of the 90s and 2000s, like we just didn't know. Well, I guess the 70s and 80s too. Like we just didn't have the tools. We were so just asleep and just going in like I don't know, the programming of what you're supposed to do and yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
it was very a very unconscious time, you know.
Yes, yes, thank you. Yes, that's what I was trying to
Yeah.
say.
So when I mean, obviously I was dealing with that like back and forth thing for a long time. I don't
Hmm.
have a lot of memories of my childhood at all.
Hmm.
Um, but I do I had so part of my awakening was I had memories come back to me uh while on a journey of sorts
Hmm.
2.5 years ago, and the memories that came back to me were very dark. And I'm going to share those today because I haven't used my throat to talk about this very much, except for with close friends. But it's going to be very difficult for me to talk about. So if I just breeze over it, that's probably why. Um, so essentially, I had memories come back that um, a father figure had raped me when I was like 8 or 9 years old. And it took about 6 to 8 months to really figure out who that was. I honestly thought it was my dad for a while, and that really fucked me up because the day that the memory came back, my daughter was with my dad, and I was convinced that my dad had done this to me. It turns out it was my uncle, and it makes a lot of sense because he lost his family. I guess lost his family, left him in about 2008, 2009, because it turns out he was raping his own daughter for years. And it was like this hush hush thing that happened in our family that like we weren't allowed to talk about. And we just had
Hmm.
to let go of our family, like my cousins and my aunt that I had known forever. We just had to let go of them and show love to my uncle who was being housed by my grandmother.
With like
Um,
no explanation as to why they just like up and left. Just it
yeah, we
was
didn't
just like
know. Yeah. We
It
were
was just,
told, yeah, when we found out what, I mean, obviously I was like ninth grade. Not obviously, none of you would know. I was in ninth grade, so obviously I was young. That's what I was gonna say. Is I was very young. And
yeah, it's
so
like what,
my
14, 13,
14,
14,
yeah.
15, somewhere in
Yeah.
there. Okay.
I was 14. So I've always been younger than my class.
Mhm.
But
Same.
my parents told me that my uncle had cheated on my aunt. And so, but that
They just
didn't like,
left out the part that it was with their
right,
child.
right. And so
Details.
details, it's, and so to me, it never really added up. I was just like, well, why would we never see them again? Like, why would, like, because we were really close family. Like,
Yeah.
every holiday we would get together, all the cousins would play. It was a huge filled house. It was crazy.
I
Oops,
get
sorry,
it.
I just touched the mic. Um, and so it was very like earth shattering because I'm just like, okay, why are me and like two other cousins the only ones that are here? Like it just didn't make
Right.
sense anymore. And
Yeah.
as I got older, I think they told us when I was like 17. Um, and it was mind blowing to me, but at the time I didn't want to ruffle feathers by like acting like, why are we talking to this man? Like why did
Right.
we choose the perpetrator over the victim? Like, but it didn't click in my head at 17. Like I wasn't really going there anymore anyways.
Mm-hmm.
Except for like Christmas and maybe
Mm-hmm.
Easter, but it was very rare that I went. And I was deep in my addiction and off to the races, with alcoholism. But to backtrack, like so that happened. And then when I was 11, my grandfather molested me at my grandma's house because he never left, right? So it was like right in their living room. And I would go
Mm-hmm.
over there all the time. So like my dad is an alcoholic as well. And uh my dad and my stepmom would like go out every weekend I was there. They would go out one night. And so I would stay at my grandparents' house. And I only saw my dad every other weekend. So it was kind of like my grandfather was like a father figure to me because he was half the time raising me as a father,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so
Right.
it was very devastating. Like I loved my grandfather. He was everything to me. And so like with my uncle, I didn't have that close of a relationship with him. I only saw him sometimes. And then during the summer, so my aunt would homeschool her kids. And so during this, like my cousins were like extremely smart, taking college course classes in high school. They were very intelligent. And so my parents would send me over there during the summer for a couple of weeks every summer to learn how to read better because
Mm-hmm.
I had like some type of learning disability with reading, and I was also very ADD, so I had a hard time like paying attention, and they didn't
Dyslexia.
yeah,
Dyslexia. I'm
a little bit of
dyslexic as
dyslexia.
hell. Dyslexic as
Yeah,
hell.
I'm more dyslexic with numbers than I am with words, but I do like the words do jump around for me, and so
My
I would
brain
have
is
this like,
dyslexic.
huh.
My brain is dyslexic. Like I'll literally go try to say something and it will come out backwards. I'm like, what just happened?
Yeah. So anyways, I would get homeschooled like every summer when I was under 10, maybe to 12, right? I don't even know how long I went. But that's when he raped me. So that's when my uncle raped me, is when I was there learning how to read. And so I'm realizing now later on in life that like I haven't really picked up a book in a long time, but it's because it's like completely connected.
Yeah.
I used to beat myself up because I didn't read enough, and I wasn't educated enough, and blah 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 blah. But in reality, one, I had a learning disability, and then on top of that, I was raped while I was trying to learn how to read.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
there was just like this deep connection that I didn't realize was there. Mind you, like this trauma was so blacked out. I blocked it out within a day of being like it happening, because it
Yeah.
was so traumatizing. Um, and I don't know if it happened more than once. I just know it happened. You know, like when I say I don't have memories from my childhood, I don't have memories from my childhood,
Oh,
like
yeah,
100%.
I have like little glimpses and little like things and stories and pieces that I remember, but
Yeah.
like as a whole, like um I remember, like I said, places and bits and things. We moved around a whole lot. I moved around a whole lot.
Mhm.
So there's certain things and certain times and certain little things that I can remember that sometimes I'm like, is that a memory or is that just like an idea in my head or something, because
Yeah.
they're so vague, but I don't have any like true memories before probably fifth or sixth grade-ish.
Mhm.
Like I just don't
Yeah.
like as far as like actually remembering in times and stuff like I know like again like I know things that have happened and I recall things and stuff like that, but it's like having the storyline and putting like the pieces together and stuff like that, it's like there's no like actual memory. It's in there somewhere, you know
Yeah.
but
I
it's
know
just yeah,
when
it's weird.
so I feel find out as I received a lot of like mental health help in my teenager years and then even like in my 20s. And I remember multiple times being told I needed to make a timeline of my life. And like, I don't have anything to put down. Like,
Yeah.
I remember very traumatic things, but like any small details of things that happened, I don't know. And so, like on top of these two traumas, I still had a lot of trauma with my family. Like I said, like they didn't know how to communicate. So like my parents would like put me as the monkey in the middle between the two. They'd be like,
Hmm.
tell your dad this, tell your mom that,
Hmm.
blah, blah. And they would be fighting,
Yes.
it's like,
Yeah.
I didn't need to do that. I was
And you
young.
get
I
to
was
be the
under 10.
you get to be the arbitrators, the child,
Yeah.
and it's like yeah,
Yeah.
it's
And
not.
so that was happening. And then like, my parents had like, they filed for bankruptcy multiple times, lost homes. So like places that I called home because we had lived there for longer than 2 years, like was ripped out from underneath us. Um, and
I
like there
laugh
was,
because go ahead, sorry.
no, it's okay. Um, so I just like didn't really have a place to call home. And I know that you share that same experience.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so like my foundations were just shattered for most of my life. And then I get into my teenage years, and like by the age of 11 I start smoking cigarettes. By 13 I'm smoking weed, and by 14 I got drunk for the first time. And it was a very pivotal moment for me. I'd had like random molestations by other boys in my class prior to that and all that kind of stuff, but then by the time I was 14, mind you, I don't remember the things that have happened to me, including what my grandfather did. I completely
Right.
blocked everything out. And so by 14, I think I'm like this like really innocent little girl, but I've obviously like sexually charged. Like I already think that like sex is how you earn love. So
Mm-hmm.
obviously that would have been like a clue that something might have happened to me. Um, but I didn't know any of that. Like I didn't know the science behind that kind of thing. And so um, I'm 14 years old. I start talking to this 16-year-old, and he invites me out to his campsite on the 4th of July. And he has a bottle of UV blue. And I think it's a good idea to chug an entire water bottle full of UV blue for my very first time drinking.
What is UV blue? Because I'm
It's
sorry,
vodka.
and that's what I was gonna say. I was gonna ask.
Mhm.
Okay.
It's
Okay.
just like a blue raspberry flavored vodka.
Okay, I know what you're talking about now. Like
Yeah.
I'm not much
And
of a drinker and I'm not much of anything, so I'm very naive to stuff. So I'll be like, what? Okay, so raspberry
yeah.
vodka, got it. So you chugged the
So,
whole water bottle.
yeah. So we filled up a water bottle and he gave it to me, and I chugged the whole thing. Yeah, my first time ever drinking. And so I'm immediately blacking out in the camping chair. and he brings me into the camp, into the tent, and tells me, trigger warning, okay. He brings me in the tent and tells me we're just gonna go to sleep. You need a rest, blah blah blah. Well, he starts touching me, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying to tell him no. I remember saying no, I don't want to do anything. No, I'm not ready. But then I start blacking in and out,
Yeah.
and I have like moments of like realizing what's happening, and I can't even talk. I'm so drunk, I can't even put words out um at this point. And so he just rapes me, and that starts what I think starts a perpetual state of like wanting love
Mm-hmm.
through sex.
Yeah.
And so my first at least 4 experiences of sex were non-consensual. And like I remember that night being dropped off at like 3 o'clock in the morning, and sneaking it back into my house and just crying on my little kid floor. Like I literally still had like pink and purple painted everywhere. Like I was a child. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember crying that like I lost my virginity and that I shouldn't have done this. And I was shaming myself, for
Mm-hmm.
even going out. And I remember chasing him for the rest of the summer, wanting love from him, but he didn't want to date
Yeah.
anybody. He wanted to be single, And so it was just
Yeah.
like this like constant
Because at least if he
chasing.
loved you, then yeah, because at least if he loved you, then it gave some not validation, but maybe some justification for the
Mhm.
action, and then it wasn't as real, and it wasn't a what's the word? I want to say perpetrator, but it's not that. My words don't come to mind. But it wasn't, if you could get that love from him, then it wasn't something that you didn't want. It was something at your will. It wasn't just you being used. It was like it had a meaning
Right,
to it because now he loves me. So
right.
yeah, that makes
And
sense.
so and then by Thanksgiving, it seems like holidays. I just got drunk, right? So like I didn't do anything all summer, and then Thanksgiving came around, and I went to a party, and I there was a guy there that I'd liked for a long time, and I don't remember getting up to the room. I know it was upstairs, but I don't remember getting up to the room or ever consenting. I just remember
Mhm.
coming to after the fact. I'm like laying in the bed naked with a sheet wrapped around me.
Mm.
Um, and I walked downstairs with just a sheet on for some reason, and one of the guy's dads came home and was trying to see what was underneath the sheet, like was trying to like I was 14 years old, and he's
Yeah,
trying to
so the
see me
dad
naked.
wasn't what's going on here. The dad was like, "Hey boys, let's see what you've got going on here."
Right. It was more of like I want to see that naked
Mm.
14-year-old body, not like, hey,
So
what the
gross.
fuck are you doing here? Get dressed. I'm gonna take you
Yeah.
home. It was, I want to see your body. Let me
You
see
know what?
underneath that.
But the sad thing is if that's how the parent is reacting, that's exactly why those boys thought that it was okay to behave
Mhm.
and be like that. That's
Yeah.
what's the most disgusting about it is that, like, yeah, the
Cat
dad
butt.
was, yeah,
Cat butt.
Yoshi showing his butt. Yoshi, quit showing your butt.
Yeah, you gotta close that, bro. I can't see. Okay, anyways.
He's like,
Um,
excuse me, I want it open.
um,
He's so funny.
I feel like anybody listening to this knows Yoshi by now because he's got to be the center of attention when I'm on record. But
Well,
so
he's our mascot. He's the
we
fairy friend mascot. So
a good
need
boy.
to find somebody to draw like a caricature of us little fairies riding on the back of Yoshi.
Yes. Oh my
Yoshi
God.
carrying us through our adventures.
I'm gonna find somebody, I swear. So come here, bub. He's got to join. Um, so anyways, like, and then, I had, it would be like 6 months to a year before I would uh engage again in activities like that. I think, I don't know, it's all a blur. But so I'm like 14 going on, or I'm like 14 going into ninth grade this summer, right? And then um so I I don't know. I don't need to say every detail, but essentially
No.
every experience was pretty much non-consensual, like, or I couldn't have consented legitimately. And to be fair,
Right.
these were children too, right? It wasn't like an adult other than that dad. Um, and so I go into high school, I'm pretty suicidal at this point. Like by the time I was 13, I was cutting myself, and thinking about dying and not wanting to be in this existence. Um, and so ninth grade, I tried to clean up my act a little bit. Like I was getting A's and B's. I was doing really well. I was on Adderall and all this kind of stuff. So like I was doing okay. And I tried to like stay away from all that. But then 10th grade rolled around and I got this boyfriend who was a little bit older than me. And he was also very like, your body is mine. If I want to have sex, you're going to have sex with me. It was never a consensual thing, really. Um, and he ended up getting me pregnant at
Mm.
15. And I found out like on a Friday, I like realized I had missed my period and I had to tell my mom, and she took me to the doctor. And of course, it was positive. Um, and me and him had just broken up, mind you. So like we were dating on and off for a year, and then I got pregnant, and then we had broken up, but I didn't know I was pregnant yet. And then I uh went to the doctor, blah blah blah. And by Saturday, I was in excruciating pain and bleeding. And I had to go to the hospital, and they told me my HCG levels were dropping. And so like I didn't even get a full 24 hours to process that I was pregnant before I had a miscarriage. Um, and
Divine intervention.
right, yeah, my dad called it a blessing in disguise
Oh yeah.
when, but I didn't understand it then, right? Like
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
didn't get it. He
Yeah.
was,
Your little 17-year-old brain just can't like
oh, I
and
was
knowing what
15.
we knew. Oh,
Yeah,
oh,
I was
15.
young.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
even worse. Yeah.
And
Yeah, you
so,
just can't.
yeah. So I never really got a chance to process it until I got sober, really. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but like uh I mean, I remember I'm like miscarrying and he wants to have sex with me. Like I'm literally bleeding out and he wants to have sex with me. That's how like disgusting this guy was.
Mm-hmm.
But I loved him, so I thought this is what I needed to do.
Right.
And
This is my way of showing him that I love him, and this is his way of showing that this is what you do. Yeah,
right.
yeah.
And so we were like getting back together when I was pregnant, right? And so by Sunday the baby had passed, at least that I understood, right? And we had broken up pretty quickly after that, and then we never got back together after that, thank God. Looking back, I'm glad that that's how everything rolled out.
Yeah.
But because of that, I skipped school on Monday and got back to school on Tuesday. Mind you, I'm in 10th grade, and apparently by Tuesday the rumors were going around that I had had an abortion. um, and so not only was I trying to grieve losing a child, trying to grieve losing a relationship, all this kind of stuff. The rumors were being spread that I had had an abortion, and so that was like a big story of mine, is like being bullied and having rumors spread about me and all this kind of stuff. And um, so within 2 weeks of that miscarriage, I was saying I was suicidal. And so they put me in Pine Rest, and I was in Pine Rest from like Thursday to Sunday. I pretty much manipulated my way out of treatment because I just didn't want to be there anymore. And then within a week of me being out of Pine Rest, which is a mental health institution here, by the way, within a week of me being out, I tried to commit suicide. So I, there was like a desire to quit smoking also in between there. And so I started my mom got me on Shantex to quit smoking. I was smoking a pack of cigarettes a day at this point. And
15, 16.
15.
15 still?
Yeah. And so my mom put me on Chantix. Or maybe this is a different time I tried to commit suicide. Anyways. So, okay, erase that. Yeah, I tried to commit suicide. I can't even remember what I did. I'm sure it was like a handful of pills because that's what I had tried before. And so I spent 2 weeks in a mental health institution again, just a different one. And then I cleaned up my act a little bit. Like my grades had dropped through that whole time period. I was smoking weed all the time, getting drunk on school nights, like it was just a shit show. And so after a while, I cleaned up my act. I quit smoking weed and only drank every once in a while because I thought weed was the problem, not drinking, right?
Right.
And so by the time I was 16, I was in like an actual really healthy relationship. I actually talked to you about this.
Mhm.
It was a consensual relationship, one that I did not understand. He was too nice, is what I always said.
Mhm.
Because I just didn't understand that that's normal.
Yeah, well, when
And
all you've known is chaos and negativity and belittling, like, and that's all you've seen, like when somebody comes along that's like nice and kind of balanced and
mhm,
normal, you're like, okay, this isn't right.
yeah,
There's something wrong with you. You don't know. Your nervous system doesn't know because your nervous system is just in constant chaos. Like your nervous
right,
system doesn't know how to calm down. And it's like they're safe and they're good, but they're too boring because you don't know how to just have that. It's like, okay, you're too nice. I don't deserve you because
right,
I am a piece of shit because that's what everybody tells me. I'm not
right.
worthy.
And then on
And
top of that, having parents that always fought, I didn't understand why we weren't fighting. You know what I
yes.
mean?
So you
Like,
start picking fights because you think that that's
yeah,
normal. That's a
yeah,
normal way of showing love and communicating is picking fights.
right.
Yes. Yeah.
And
I,
so,
I sometimes now, even now, I revert back when I feel a little bit off my square. I'll catch myself, or Michael will call me out and he'll be like, "Why are you picking a fight?" And I'm like, "Oh, I am. I feel unsettled right now, so I like have to pick a fight to try to find some balance. Like
mhm,
I'm feeling insecure, so I have to pick a fight for you to show me that you love me." And yeah, I catch it. I don't do it nearly like I used to at all, but yeah, it's an interesting pattern or programming or whatever you want to call it that gets ingrained in there.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I was in a healthy relationship, or at least I thought I was the toxic one in that one, and um, he was a little bit younger than me, so like I don't know. But anyways, like I said, I was smoking a pack of cigarettes a day at this point. And so like the grandfather that molested me was my dad's dad, and the uncle that raped me was my dad's brother. So it's like all on the dad's side.
So
Um,
clearly there's some freaking stuff
generational
going
trauma.
fam yes,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah. And
yes.
so
Mm.
when I was 16, my mom's father passed away, her adoptive father, and he was amazing. Okay, like
Hmm.
he was the like just a wonderful soul, just pure. And yeah, he had his quirks. He was like a clean freak and whatever. He's a little bit controlling, but like he was still like a beautiful soul.
Hmm.
And for 5 years prior to this, at 16, he had severe dementia. And so, like, he didn't really remember who I was, but we would go visit him at the nursing home and stuff. And so, when I was 16, I'm heavy into my addiction again. And he's dying of congestive heart failure. And he passed away, and for some reason I just felt the need to like quit smoking because I saw like my dad's dad struggling with all the effects of smoking cigarettes, and then my grandfather dying of congestive heart failure. I was just like, okay, I want to quit smoking. And so I told my mom, and she got me on Chantix. And Chantix has a really negative effect on my body. Like I am very sensitive to medications, antidepressants, literally everything, very sensitive. And so I started having nightmares of my grandfather dying in my arms every night.
Mm.
I'd close my eyes and he was dying in my arms. It was like I was in this void space and I'd be kneeling down on the ground, holding him, begging him to stay alive.
Mm.
I can still see it today. Um, and so I started getting scared of going to sleep because I didn't want to see that anymore.
Yeah.
And so I stopped sleeping for like 3 days. I didn't sleep. I just stayed up.
Ugh.
And I
And that in itself will make you feel a little bit freaking crazy too when you're
yeah,
deprived of sleep. So you
it
add that
did.
all together.
It
Oh,
did.
baby girl.
So I one day while my mom was at work and I was supposed to be at school, I stayed home because I wasn't sleeping and I didn't feel good. So one day it was like if I tried to take a nap, immediately that dream would come up. Like it was terrifying. I'm sorry.
Okay. You don't need see, that's why Yoshi needed to come sit in your lap. He knew that you were needing some support. So he's like, all
He's
right,
doing a
mama's
little Reiki
fixing,
magic.
yeah, mama's fixing to unpack some shit. I need to come and give her some love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I decide that it's a smart idea to take a shit ton of Tylenol PMs and anything else I can find in my medicine cabinet to try to go
Mm-hmm.
to sleep and not wake up. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and uh, and then I started like cutting myself on my wrist, trying to like I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. I was like trying to cut the arteries, like I was trying to like just I was
Mm-hmm.
crazy, you know. And then like the room started spinning and I didn't know what was going on anymore and I started to get really freaked out. So I called my mom and I told her what I did. And she rushed over there to take me to the hospital. And I spent a couple days in the hospital because like the Tylenol was like shutting my liver down.
Mm.
And one thing I haven't touched on is like my relationship with my dad has at this point been very strained, very, very
Mm.
strained. And due to his alcoholism, his inability to show emotion. And then I think a lot of it was like the trauma that his family had put on me. At this point, I didn't realize it existed. Right. But like obviously, subconsciously, there was something there.
Yeah, you were
And
still holding that trauma in your body. You were
right.
still
Yeah.
holding that. Yeah.
And
You didn't know
so,
what it was or why. You just knew that it was there.
right. And so, like, my dad is sitting in the hospital room with me, screaming at me, saying, how could you do this? Why would you do this to yourself? How could you do this to our family? Just screaming bloody murder at me. The hospital staff had to kick him out. Um, and
Your
so,
dad, I don't know, example A right there in front of me.
yeah,
Sure. For those who think I might sound shallow when I throw humor and say probably inappropriate things, that's kind of my way of dealing with dark stuff is
yeah,
inappropriate comments and humor.
right.
So please don't think I'm being insensitive because I'm not at all.
I think you'd try to like lighten the energy because, like, this is like very deep stuff for me,
Yes.
but like, so I ended up going into Pine Rest again. And this time I'm sitting in group, and all of a sudden I had flashes of what my grandfather did to me come up. And so, luckily, these memories came up in a mental institution because otherwise I probably would
Mm-hmm.
have tried to kill myself again. Um, but I here's more trauma with my dad. I tell my dad through a letter what happened to me because I don't know how to talk to him. So, like, my way of communicating with him about really deep, hard stuff was to write him a letter.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I was taught to do in like therapy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, he reads this letter and before talking to me, he goes and sees his therapist, and his therapist is not trauma informed, has no idea what borderline personality disorder, because this is what they're thinking about diagnosing me with, by the way. has no idea what borderline personality disorder is. And for those of you who don't know what that is, it's like essentially a mental disorder that comes about from childhood trauma, severe trauma, triggers something that kind of like fragments your soul and essentially like creates all these different characteristics that like if you meet certain characteristics, they just diagnose you with it, which I think it's kind of bullshit now, but that's what I was diagnosed with. And so he talks to his therapist, and his therapist says oftentimes people with borderline personality disorder confuse their abuser with someone they love, which is 100% not true. Okay. Not true. It's actually the opposite. Oftentimes, it is someone they love that abuses them, and they confuse it with someone else because they don't want to believe it was the person they love, right? The complete opposite. So this therapist was just fucking idiotic. But my dad took that and ran with it. He did not want to believe that my grandfather abused me. He did not want to have to deal with that, so he ran with it. And tells me this, and so immediately I'm thinking, oh, I've just tried to ruin my family. I'm making things up. Somebody else abused me, and I shouldn't have said anything, and I start blaming myself, right, for the chaos that was ensued. But I literally can't see it being anybody else, so I just stayed away from the family. And I didn't talk to my dad for an entire year after that. And it just became like my yes, I was on antidepressants. I think by the time I got out of that institution, I was literally taking a handful of pills every single day. I can't even tell you what I was on. I was just taking a handful of pills that I was prescribed every day as prescribed, right? I was a fucking zombie at the age of 16. And you know, I think things kind of slowed down a little bit. By the time I was 17, I was getting in trouble with the law for stealing alcohol. And by the time I was, uh, I graduated high school pretty well. I did pretty well in
So
school.
were you still taking your prescription drugs and mixing it with your alcohol? Or at some point did you just say, I'm not taking these drugs again anymore, and you just self-medicated with the alcohol?
No, I mean, I stayed on medications for a long time. And I would drink on top of them.
Okay.
One of the drugs I was on was Seroquel. And for those of you who don't know what that is, Seroquel is like an antipsychotic.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a pretty potent drug that you take for sleep. Um, and like they had me, I was 115 pounds, and they had me on 200 milligrams of this shit, which is
That's
insane.
insane.
It's
That's
insane
insane. Yeah,
to
that's
the
a
point.
lot.
Yeah, so
Wow.
to the point I would like wake up for school in the morning, and by the time I got up the stairs, I was on the kitchen floor sweating bullets, and my blood pressure was like just fucking all over the place because my blood pressure was so low from the medication to keep me
Mm-hmm.
asleep that like when I would walk up the stairs, my blood pressure would skyrocket.
Mm-hmm.
And like I would be drip sweating, cold, like needing to like lay on the floor to cool my face down, otherwise I'd pass out. I did that every morning. Okay. And I stayed on this medication until I was sober at 20. So like
Yeah, because they give that to either you're very antipsychotic, or I think they give that to like addicts that they're trying to get them balanced out. Because I know that during several rehabs and psychiatric evaluations, the family member that I have was put on Seroquel, was one of the many medications that was given.
yeah,
And
it's mainly for people like I mean they do use it for like people who are psychotic, right? But like
yeah, like
they
yeah,
use it also for people who have like severe emotional ups and downs. It's to like
right.
level you out, right?
Right. Like if
And
you're like a manic depressive bipolar, they use it for that. Or if like you're schizophrenic or like certain
mhm.
high
Yeah.
things
So
they
they
use it for. But then they also use it with addicts to balance them out and level them out and basically reset their nervous system from stuff. Because I think they only use it for like 6 to 8 weeks is what they
I was on
anticipate,
this
if
for
I recall.
years. Years.
Oh no,
You know, at least 2.5 years I was on this medication.
it's
And so
crazy.
eventually I just started like loving the high that I would get from drinking on the Seroquel because the Seroquel brought me down, right? Brought my anxiety down.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would drink on it and I would black out every time. So like it was just like a fucking blast to me. It became like a game to see how long I could stay up drunk on this stuff because I loved the high from it, you know? And it was very dangerous because not only does
Yeah.
alcohol lower your blood pressure, but so does Seroquel. And
Yeah. At any
so,
point, your heart could just be like, okay, we're going nighty night.
and it happened. I told you about that today, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
So, you know, I was somebody who didn't ever drink beer or frou-frou drinks, right? Like I was somebody who drank whiskey and rum because I wanted to get drunk and vodka made me puke. So I drank whiskey and rum, you know? Little 17-year-old girl drinking whiskey and rum all the
Oh,
time. And so, you know, I was jumping in and out of relationships. Um, I met my ex, you know, my ex-husband now. I met him when I was 17 years old, and it was love at first sight. Um, but I was still very alcoholic, and so was he. And it was a shit show from the very beginning,
mm-hmm.
you know. He was cheating on me all the time, and I was chasing him all the time and trying to control him. And we would go like 6 months, I think was the longest we had dated early on. And then we would break up and then we would date, we would be broken up for 2 weeks or a month or 2 months. And then we'd get back together for 3 months and then 4 months. And you know what I mean? Like it was just this like on and off
Mm-hmm.
bullshit. And like I would date people in between to try and keep myself preoccupied, to try and forget about him, blah, 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 blah. Well, like I said, I was getting in trouble with the law a lot. I got in trouble like 4 times before I actually got sober. And we had a party at my house. I lived with my brother and a roommate at the time. We had a party there, and the cops got called at like 3 o'clock in the morning. We all tried to hide, but the cops were literally surrounding our house. Like, literally, there was 20, 30 cops surrounding our
Like,
house.
jump in bed, pretend like we're asleep.
That's what we did, right? We did literally did that.
Oh my God, I'm picturing that. That's hilarious.
Yeah, it was, I mean, we were so drunk by this time, right? And there was like cocaine there, and there was, you know what I mean? Like there was a lot going on in this space. Um, and so anyways, we finally decided to go down because they weren't going to leave us alone. And we had
Was
like,
did they get called for like a noise complaint or like
yeah, we were
what?
playing music too loud.
So they
Somebody,
surrounded, they sent 20 or 30 cops for a damn noise complaint.
well, I think maybe somebody might have said, I think there's underage people there. And so if there's underage people
Uh,
there, they need a lot of cops to book, right?
yeah. Okay. Yeah. Right. Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of underage people there because I was 20 years old and I invited my friends, you know, I was turning 20, and my dumbass is so drunk that like I try to lie about my age, but I lied wrong. So I tried to tell them that I just turned 21, but I accidentally said I was not 21 yet. Like a couple days from now, I would be 21.
Just could not get that story straight at all.
No, no. And so I got arrested for disorderly person because I was trying, they were like roughing up my brother and he had been sleeping, and I got pissed and I went towards the cop, like leave him alone. And like I was being rough with the cop. And so I got arrested for disorderly conduct. One of my brother's friends got arrested for trying to defend me for disorderly conduct. And then I almost got
Minor,
charged. Huh?
did you get minor in possession or
I
minor?
did, yeah, I did get a
Yeah.
minor in possession. And then I also almost got charged for lying to the cops. So, because I also lied
Well,
about my
what?
middle name. I'm like
Giving
getting
a
booked
false
in,
identity. Giving
I'm
a false
getting,
identity. Oh
yeah,
my
I'm getting booked in the jail cell. And I was like, oh, by the way, I lied about my name too.
God. My daughter dated in high school, she dated this little Arab boy, and she ran around with the little group of, all the Arabs and whatever. And the boys had gotten in trouble one night, and I think because they all used to hang out at the lake and, drinking and, doing what freaking obnoxious high school kids do. And they all ended up getting arrested. Well, none of the Arab moms really spoke real good English or whatever. So I ended up going down there. Haley's like, "Come on, mom, you gotta go down there, you gotta go down there." And then one cop's like, her boyfriend had got in trouble because he's like, he said, "Well, he gave me the wrong name. He gave me the name, blah, 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 which looks like it's his cousin's name or whatever." And no, 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 no. And I said, "Dude, they've got like six names. He was probably just confused in which one you wanted." He just looked at me. I'm like, seriously, come on now.
Yeah,
Yeah, but it was funny. I was just like, they've got like six names. Come on.
right. Yeah, I think in our culture, we don't really name people like that. I mean, every once in a while, but
Yeah.
it's very rare.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. You like have a first, middle, and a last, like whatever.
yeah,
Like Michael doesn't even have a middle name. He just
yeah,
has
that's weird.
his first name and his surname. He doesn't even. So when I get in trouble, because when you're frustrated or aggravated with somebody, you always got to use that middle name.
Hmm.
So when I'm really annoyed with him, I'm like, Michael, no name, last name.
Hmm.
So,
You just give him a middle name and just call him that all the time.
well, I've been trying to figure out what I want it to be because I need to make it to be something like really kind of funny and ridiculous. And there's
Hmm.
nothing that's just like stuck yet.
Hmm.
Like if it was you, if like I needed to make up, I'd be like Mackenzie Gertrude Penning. So it's got to be something stupid like
Right.
Herbert, Michael
Herbert. I
Herbert.
like
But I
her.
think but he's got a friend named Herbert, though, I think, in Germany.
Oh,
So I've got to double check that. Oh, no, that's Norbert. I could do Herbert. Michael Herbert. Yeah.
so
Okay, sorry, squirrels.
no, it's okay. So, anyways, like at this point, I realize that my life is completely unmanageable and I'm a shit show. So I remember like calling so I was suicidal in the drunk tank, and they kept me in there with nothing but shorts and a t-shirt. Um, like I was freezing my ass off. I'm detoxing in the jail cell. And they kept me in there all by myself because I said I was suicidal and they didn't have any other precautions. So I never fully got booked in jail. I mean, I did, but I didn't like go to like a room, you know what I mean? Like with a bunch of other
Mm-hmm.
girls. And I remember calling my mom on the intercom because you didn't have a phone inside the jail cell. You just had an intercom and telling her that I need help, like I can't do
Mm-hmm.
this anymore. And so she was able to get me out at 11 a.m. And I remember like looking around, like she brought me back to the house. I remember looking around my room, trying to find something that I could kill myself real quick because she was about to
Mm.
take me to a mental institution.
Hmm.
And she kind of sensed something was going on. So she came upstairs and helped me finish packing my bag and brought me back to Pine Rest. And I spent 2 weeks in this dual diagnosis program. So it's like people with mental
Mm-hmm.
disorders as well as alcoholism or addiction. And um, yeah, I mean, I don't need to go into too much detail about everything, but like I essentially got sober at that point. There was one experience that I had, that my first spiritual experience, and I guess that's what the point of this whole story is, right? Like, before that, I never really had spiritual experiences. Like, I think when I was like 11 or 12, I tried praying to God and he didn't answer my prayers, so I just wrote him off, right? Like, because I was told, like, you pray to God and he'll answer your prayers, right? I never was
Mm-hmm.
told if it's right for you or if it's in
Right.
alignment,
It's just
right?
like this is the fact. If you pray, it'll
Right.
happen. And
It'll happen.
I think that's the problem why so many people lose and fall out of religion and belief and whatever, because it's like, why would God do this? Why would this? Why? Well,
Right.
I prayed for it and it didn't come. I've prayed for all these things and they've never happened. It's like, yeah, it's because you weren't given the caveat of if it's the right thing, or maybe it did happen, just not in the way that you wanted it to, or the tools were given to you, the path was set out to you to make it happen, but you didn't follow it. Like, You know
Well,
what I mean?
what I was praying for was I was praying that my parents would get back together because I didn't want to deal with my step parents anymore.
That's the prayer of everybody.
Right.
Can I tell you that that is how my dad and my current stepmom ended up getting together? It was because when I
Hmm.
was 11, I was living with my dad at the time, and the only thing I wanted for Christmas, decided that I was going to parent trap my parents. And so I convinced my dad that we needed to go to Arizona. I wanted to spend Christmas with my mom and all of us together. And my dad and I were living in Colorado at the time. And yeah, that didn't work. My mom had a boyfriend, but I was going to break them up and get her and my dad back together. But then my dad ended up going out and meeting my stepmom, who, oddly enough, my stepmom has known me longer than she's known my dad. My
Hmm.
stepmom used to babysit me before she even met my dad. Isn't that
That's
crazy?
crazy.
I know, so weird. But yeah,
So,
so that's like every parent, every kid. I'm dreading the time that um my stepdaughter gets to, because I know she's gonna have that at some point. I know she is, because every kid is, even if they like the step parent, they still kind of go through that.
yeah,
So I'm just dreading when she does that, because it's gonna be a nightmare.
right. So obviously that didn't come true,
Yeah.
and I just lost faith. And so I just like completely wrote off spiritual experiences, you know? And so I'm in this mental institution, and there was this guy that came, and I know him today, but there was this member of the 12 step program that would come in and hold meetings for us. And the I remember arguing with him saying like, there is no God, and if there is, fuck him because he never did anything for me. Like I was so
Hmm.
angry. I was yelling at this
Yeah.
guy I barely knew. And he just kept telling me, just try it, just go to your room, get down on your knees and pray. And I was really resistant to that, but I finally did. And I went into my mental institution room, got down on my knees, and I prayed. And I was crying to my grandfather, begging for. Oh, and mind you, my grandfather who abused me died a month before I got sober. So there's that.
Mm.
Um, and so like I had all these really weird feelings about my grandfather. Like I had a lot of regrets for even saying anything, and like I was kind of under this impression that maybe I just misinterpreted his behavior. And so I
Hmm.
still had a lot of love for him at that point. I wasn't really that angry.
Right.
I was more angry at myself. And so I was
Yeah.
praying to him, and I was just saying, Grandpa, please help me, save me. I can't do this on my own. Please help me, over and over again. And I'm bawling, right? And so my first spiritual experience was I literally felt this energy come over my shoulders and like hug me. And I immediately stopped crying. Like every tear just dried up. Like I was just
Mm.
okay. I was safe,
Oh, I
you
just
know?
got chills.
Yeah. And so obviously I don't really know anything about spirituality at this point. I actually kind of fell back asleep after that. Like I used like the program as my higher power for a long time because I just didn't understand. And then it was like Mother Earth, or it was just nature. I didn't have a label for Mother Earth yet. It was just nature, right?
Hmm.
And I was pretty miserable for like the first 7 years of my sobriety and even into my eighth year, but like I was actually finding hope, right?
Hmm.
And so there's not really many details that I need to go into except for like in my sobriety. I know that I kind of talked a lot about trauma, and I'm not really talking about the experience, strength, and hope, but like I was very miserable in my sobriety too. Like I went into mental institutions in sobriety, and I'm saying sobriety a lot. And um
Well, but all of that, it's all a part of your story and your journey that's got
mhm,
you to this
yeah.
point now, to the topic of this podcast, and or the topics and just the randomness that it's going to be. I mean, so I feel like a lot of addicts have had abuse of some sort.
Mhm.
And I feel like if you don't, I think a lot of abuse victims um either have some sort of addiction of some sort, or they have some kind of mental something or other. You know,
Right.
there's it's you it's our programming. We're not programmed to handle and carry all of that. So, you know, all of it's just a journey of figuring it out and unpacking and healing that,
Yeah.
you know.
No, for sure. I
It's
mean, there's so much to unpack, right? Like
mm-hmm.
I I don't know. So, I had a couple of spirit like experiences afterwards. Like I worked at a rehab center in 2016 and 2015 to 2016 in Grand Rapids, and it was in this like old house that literally still had like this like the slaves quarters, right? Like it was separated.
I just got such a weird feeling, tight, like feeling down my back when you just said the house before you even said the slave quarters. I was like, oh, there was a lot of energy still trapped in. Like, I'm
Oh
getting a
yeah.
knot in my stomach right now. Like,
And it was
that's
creepy
crazy.
stuff that happened, right? So
What?
I worked third shift there. I worked second and third shift
What?
and yeah,
Oh,
part-time. And it was the creepiest fucking thing because I was the only person awake in the house. Everybody else was sleeping.
yeah.
And the first experience I had was when I was on second shift, and the girls, they were all in different rooms. I think there might have been two girls in the room outside of my door, but there's like this old sliding door that goes to my office, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there is the office, there's another office through a doorway, and then there's a bathroom that attaches to the kitchen. So it's like you walk through everything to get to everything. It's just like a big circle,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so I'm sitting at my desk and I can hear the girls kind of chitter chattering around the house. Like it's an all female rehab center, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
can hear them chitter chattering. But like there's not really anybody moving around. But all of a sudden, that door that's really hard to move, by the way, because it's very heavy, goes like
Mm-hmm.
this. It slides out and then it slides back. Nobody touched it.
Almost like someone was opening it just to like look in and see who was there, and then just like
No,
closed
the
it
door
again.
was wide open. So it was like they were trying to close it and then it just fell back. Yeah.
Interesting.
And so that was the first experience I ever had. And then after that, I was kind of freaked out about the place, right? Okay, so those Snapchat filters that are like puppy dogs?
Yes.
I was using the Snapchat filter one night, and I know that there can be weird things with the app and it's glitchy, right? But like, I was using one of those Snapchat filters, and I was sitting at my desk in the middle of the night. I think it was like 1 o'clock in the morning, and behind me, the Snapchat filter picks up a face. Yeah, and I thought, oh, it's just glitching, right? So I clear it out and bring it back up, pops right back up, same spot.
Did you get a pic? Did you save that picture?
I
Did
don't
you look at
remember. I
it?
don't remember if I saved it.
Oh, you weren't awake at that point, so you wouldn't have
Mm-mm.
been.
I
You
was
would have
just
just.
freaked out, like I did,
Yeah. Oh, I can
and
imagine.
my logical mind was telling me, oh, it's just glitching, right? I still wanted to
Yeah.
believe it was just glitching. And so I wish I would have, because then um like a month later or something like that, I was working third shift again. And I told you how it's an office, bathroom, and then
Mm-hmm.
kitchen, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's two doors on either side of the bathroom. One door goes to the office, one door goes to the kitchen. The door that goes to the kitchen is right next to the toilet. So I'm like say I'm sitting on the toilet right now. The door is like right here.
Okay.
Okay. And I'm sitting there. I just started to pee. And then I hear three scratches on the door closest to the kitchen. Okay. No one is up, Amber. It's like 3 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning. No one is up. So I'm freaking out. I'm not even willing to go into the kitchen anymore because I think something is in there. I literally sat on that toilet for 5 minutes. I like had just started peeing, so I like held my pee for like a straight minute, waiting to hear something else. Nothing happened. So I finished peeing and then I just sat there for another 5 minutes.
I say I would have just gone and been like, all right, I need to go ahead and just pee because otherwise I'm gonna pee my pants if there's something else there.
Right. And so the rest of the night, I remember talking to my friend Dylan about it, and he was like he was like curious, but also trying to calm me down.
Right.
And so it was just this really weird experience. And I like spent the rest of the night not checking on any of the clients because I'm supposed to check and do rounds every hour. Make
You're
sure
like,
there's
I'm not
I did
going
not check on
anywhere.
the clients the rest of the night. I'm like, I'm not going out or anywhere in this house. No, no, thank you. You
So
know?
crazy. That's so crazy.
And so, mind you, this is also on the side of the house with the slave quarters, right? Or the help. So, like,
Mm.
there's two staircases in this building. There's the fancy staircase for the white people, and then the crooked, scary
Mm-hmm.
staircase for the black people. Like, it was how it was, right? It was
Right.
very segregated. And so, yeah, this creepy stuff is happening on that side of the house. And I never really fed into it after that. I think a month after that, I decided I wanted to move. And so I moved to Georgia. And then I stayed there for 6 months, got into like a toxic relationship. Mind you, all this time in sobriety, I am back and forth with Chris. Or sorry, I probably shouldn't say names. My ex-husband, right? I'm back and forth with my ex-husband. And we were just dating at that time. And so when I moved to Georgia, my intention was to get away from this toxic relationship because
Mm-hmm.
I knew it was hurting me, right? And so I went down to Georgia and I lived there for 6 months, got into another toxic relationship with a female. And then we broke up because God spoke to her and told her being gay is wrong, even though she was gay for like 6 years prior to meeting me. It was just very stupid. And so right, I know. And so like that made me lose all faith in a higher power again because I was just like, fuck all of this, right? And then on top of that, like we had like a pastor come over that like my brothers live down there. And so like a pastor that my brother knew came over and tried to talk to me, trying to explain what was going on with this girl that I was dating and that she just found God again and that she needs this and blah 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 blah, right?
I
And
love that
so
Southern religion.
I mean, this is the deep South, right? Like
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
we're like 45 minutes north of Florida at this point.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
like deep, deep South. And um, so I decide to pack up my bags and I'm talking to my friend Dylan again, the guy that I talked to when this freaky thing happened.
Mm-hmm.
And I go stay at my friend's house in North Carolina for a little while, and then I drive by myself with my cat all the way across the country to California. And I go,
From
yeah,
Georgia? Like
from North
literally.
Carolina,
Oh shit.
because I went from Georgia up to North Carolina and then
Okay.
drove over to, yeah, yeah. So
Wow.
it took me like 4 or 5 days with
Mm-hmm.
Yoshi. Yoshi came with me. He was on this adventure. And
She's your war dog,
I
dude.
know. Yeah. He's been in my life since 2015. So like a year after I got sober.
Yeah.
And so I I make it to California and I'm living on a friend's couch for a month. I think I'm going to be moving in with Dylan and like we started dating, so it got a little like chaotic. Um and I love Dylan to death. He's still a very close friend of mine, and we probably shouldn't have dated. We just had like a lot of love for each other, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so that became very toxic very quick. We only dated for like 2 months or something like that before we broke up. Um, but I ended up moving into this person's house, this random person on Craigslist. I ended up moving into his house all the way in Corona. So I'm like living in Huntington Beach on my friend's couch, moved to Corona. So I moved inland like 45 minutes and I'm working in Huntington Beach at a treatment center. Um, and Dylan and I go to San Diego one weekend and we go to this haunted house and we get like this tour around this haunted house. I'm curious, but like I don't know if I believe anything still at this point. Like yeah, I had those experiences in the in the treatment center, but
Mhm.
like I feel like I need to speed this up. Okay. So I have
What are we, an hour and a half in?
yeah. So essentially I had this weird me and Dylan simultaneously had this crazy experience, which neither of us are like fully sure what we believe, right? But
Right.
like we're sitting in this theater that they have up top of the house, and both of us get really sick to our stomachs, and we think, well,
Mm.
maybe it's something we ate, right? But like it was exactly at the same time we both get sick to our stomach, and we realized we didn't eat the same things. We ate different stuff. So it's not like, you
Right.
know, and so that was like a really weird, and it took a while for that feeling to go away. We had to leave the building for the feeling to go away. And when I did leave, it did go away, you know? And so these are like
Mhm.
the small experience I had. Well, um, fast forward, I moved back home. My ex and I get back involved with each other. Oh, that's a pretty big spiritual experience, I guess. Like I kept thinking about him, right? For like a whole week. It just would not come out of my head. Like I was thinking
Mhm.
about him. And this was about 6 months into living in California. And I just had this feeling like I need to contact him. And so I wrote him, and I hadn't talked to him in 6 months. And it turns out this motherfucker is only 8 hours away from me in Reno, Nevada. Okay.
What?
Yeah. And he said, I've been thinking about you a lot too. Right. And so we decide to drive 4 hours each, and we meet each other at Death Valley. Okay. Synchronicity, right? Like we meet in Death Valley, and
Dun dun dun.
we experience like a really beautiful thing. Like I mean, Death Valley is terrifying, but it's also beautiful, right? It's a very cool
Yeah.
space. But before we met up, the night I'm talking to him, I experienced my very first earthquake. Okay. So like I connect with him, and within hours, the earth literally shook. Okay. I don't make this connection until later on into my awakening, right? But like I was
Right.
just like freaked out, blah blah blah. We meet up in Death Valley, and a month later I move back home, and he flies out to California to help me drive back. And it was a beautiful experience, everything was just beautiful. But it was still toxic. And
Yeah.
we were so enthralled with each other, like we wanted to have a kid together, and we wanted to get married and all this kind of stuff. Well, we were talking about having a kid, and then um all of a sudden he switched his tune, and he wasn't ready for a kid again. And turns out I got pregnant after he decided he didn't want a kid anymore. And so here I am, pregnant with our beautiful daughter. And it was toxic, and we broke up once while I was pregnant. And then but we decided, so we had our daughter, and then on a Friday, and then by the next Friday we moved into our first house, and within a month of us having our daughter we were married. So like we did all of the like very big steps all in 1 month, or like a month and a half. And so
Life changing
yes,
thing.
very life changing. And
Yeah.
after having my daughter, I
That,
had
but that makes me, this is the first time I'm hearing some of these parts of, like, I've heard bits and pieces and stuff, but this is the first time I'm hearing like all of it, and like how you guys got married and stuff. And it makes me understand so much more. It makes me understand. It clarifies
mhm,
the situation, like conversations and stuff that we've had and whatever. It's like,
mhm.
okay, it's like I understand some of the chaos a little bit more with that. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot to it, right? Like I'm sure I've left a shit ton out.
Yeah, well, yeah.
um, but so after having my daughter, I got like a bad infection in my uterus, like part of my placenta didn't release. And so like I got a really bad infection, and I had to take antibiotics, and I'm breastfeeding at this time, and the antibiotics really affected her physically.
Mm.
And so she was like this perfect little angel baby for like a whole week. And then after I had the antibiotics, she just cried nonstop. She never stopped crying. Like there was very rare times where she was okay, like,
Yeah.
and this happened for like at least 8 months. She just cried all the time.
That's
And
crazy.
so I became very, very depressed. I had severe postpartum depression, severe postpartum rage. I even
Hmm.
had some very dark thoughts about my daughter that, like, it's very hard for me to admit, like I was fucked up.
Yeah.
And so I eventually started using some of Mother Earth's medicine to calm down my nervous system because I was in like a state of fight or flight all of the time. And I didn't realize
Hmm.
this at the time, but like my nerves were shot.
Hmm.
And I ended up uh doing that for a while, and it really helped me to calm down because I just needed that little bit of time at night to just calm myself
Shut
down
it
and
down.
and
Yeah.
shut it down because otherwise
Yeah.
I was just like, oh. And then the pandemic hit. Okay. So as soon as I'm starting to calm down and get happier, it was like my daughter was like 16, 18 months old. 16, no, she was almost a year old when the pandemic hit. And I think I was just starting to get better. Or she was a
Yeah.
year old when the pandemic hit. So like she
Somewhere
turned
around
a
there.
yeah, she turned a year old in February of 2020, and then everything shut down by March,
In March. Yeah.
right? So like I had just started to get better towards the end of her first year, and then the pandemic hit
Hmm.
and my anxiety just went 100 times higher. Um
Right.
and I didn't know what was going on. They were feeding us a lot of information that made me feel like everybody was going to die and that my daughter was going to die because she was an at-risk group, and just like, it was a shit show. So here I am, like watching the news all day long, freaking the fuck out. Um, and then like uh Chris was able, or whatever, I'm just going to say his name. I've said it
It's
like
just
10 times now.
whatever. It's fine. There's
So
yeah.
he was staying home more because the his work shut down, and we actually started to build a closer relationship. Yeah, I was a little annoyed with him because, oh, this is the other thing. He was gone all the time. So on top of me
Right.
having
During your
postpartum
marriage.
depression, my daughter crying all the time, Chris was gone all the time with work. All of the time. I mean, yeah, maybe on the weekend he'd be home, but then he would want to go fishing and he would want to do this and he would want to do that. And so like I had no breaks whatsoever. So I was fucked up. And so when he was home for 3 months, like we got a lot of things done around the house. We were building our relationship again. Yeah, we were annoyed with each other because we weren't used to being around each other that much anymore. And so like it was beautiful and hard. Well, then he goes back to work and we almost lose our house because he was making all this money with unemployment and he was making the same amount that he was making prior to. He worked overtime all of the time. Like he was working
Right.
70 hours a week, if not more. And so we were living off of that money. Well, then he went back to work and he was only getting 40 hours. We literally couldn't pay our bills. We didn't,
Yeah.
there was no way. And so I decided to go back to work, and I was working, blah, 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 blah. So I was working selling life insurance. And I started in January of 2021 working and selling life insurance.
Hmm.
There was something in me. I don't know if it was TikTok or just like Facebook, it's whatever. I don't know what it was, but something told me to get a tarot deck. And I was like, okay. So I was terrified of tarot. I mean, I had all this shit in my mind thinking it's like working with the devil, blah, 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 blah. And so I went to, I Googled tarot cards near me because I don't know what the fuck. I don't know what a metaphysical shop is at this point, right? Like I have no idea.
Right.
And Barnes and Noble pops up. Okay.
Ah!
I get my first two decks from Barnes and Noble. And um I think it had been like, this was like March. Yeah, this was March of 2021. And I didn't really play with them because I was still very freaked out about the decks. Like, I didn't really understand what I was supposed to be doing. I didn't know
Mm-hmm.
like how to protect myself. I didn't know anything. I just knew that like bad things could happen. That's what I thought, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't really mess around with them that much. But then Easter Sunday, so in April, on Easter Sunday, I'm driving around on my quad because it's like the first nice day of the year and we're having a blast. And I go over my driveway a little too fast. And I lose control of the quad and it's up in the air sideways like this. I have
Ah.
no helmet on. And I was afraid that it was going to topple like this and break my leg, right? I thought it was going to land on me. So my instinct was let go. So I let go. I let the quad just fly through the air and I fell down on the ground. Okay. Um, I got very fucked up mentally from that.
Mm-hmm.
And I had bruises all over my body. It was pretty bad. And
When was this? 2021
yeah,
or
so the
2020?
2021.
Okay. It's just
So
very interesting that my story also includes a near-death experience with a quad, but it was my daughter, not me. My
mhm,
daughter had she almost died, and the quad actually flipped and landed on her and gashed her leg, and yeah, it was a mess. She
yeah,
almost, yeah, yeah.
it's
So
crazy.
I just thought that it was just funny. I was like, oh my god, this sounds like Haley's story.
Yeah, I mean, so I didn't have like a near death experience. I mean, yeah, I was afraid I was gonna die, right? But like it was more that the concussion um was so bad that I was like
Mm-hmm.
seeking physical therapy for it. I was seeing a regular therapist, like I was seeing all these doctors, and every
Mm-hmm.
single doctor I saw was pushing me towards meditation. I needed to calm my mind. I needed to relax, blah, 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 right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, June comes around, um, and I decide that after hesitation, I wasn't sure if I wanted the V word that went along with the pandemic. I can't really say that. And I was hesitant because I didn't feel like I really needed it.
Right.
And I didn't think that there was enough studies on it. Like, I didn't think that we had enough time to really know what the effects were, which I think was fair. But, society said that that's not fair and that you should just get it because they say it's good.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I fell into that like guilt mindset of like, if you don't get it, you're killing your grandma. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And my doctor assured me, I talked to him for like 45 minutes to an hour, that it'd be fine, blah, blah, blah. My first one, I immediately had a reaction. Um, my heart was racing. Um, I got home and I thought, oh, it's just anxiety. It'll calm down. It'll be fine. But then the next day I woke up, immediately my heart's racing again. So I know it's not anxiety at this point because I wasn't even thinking about what had transpired the day before. I just woke up.
Right.
So my heart must have been racing all night long and it calmed down a little bit to let me sleep. But then it was racing again and my blood pressure was all over the place. I wasn't able to like go up and down the stairs without nearly passing out. Um, my hands were tremoring, like these three fingers on both hands would just like all the time. And I was essentially gaslit by the medical community. I was gaslit by my family. I was told that like it was just anxiety and I was fine and that I should get the second one and blah, you know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
my partner didn't even believe me. Like it was very trying time to like believe myself, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this tied back to the trauma of my dad not believing me,
Right.
right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
so um yeah, I kind of went in myself. I went into myself and just stopped. I like deleted Facebook. I like kind of went down like a rabbit hole of like learning about like the experience of people who had also had bad reactions to this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the only place that I found solace, you know.
Yeah.
And I started to dive deeper into my spiritual practices as well, but I was still very broken from everything that had
Mm-hmm.
transpired. Like the concussion symptoms lasted like the entire summer. And then on top of that, I was dealing with the effects of the thing. So like I couldn't even go outside because my head would hurt so bad from the sun. And then the heat would make my heart race again. And so there was just a lot that was going on with me medically. I was in and out of the doctor's office, in and out of therapy, blah, 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 blah. I found guided meditations and I started having these like profound spiritual experiences and I started diving deeper into tarot.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't really like even this, like I don't really remember everything, but like I know my partner and I tried different earth medicines to help build our relationship again.
Mm-hmm.
And one experience that I had, I went down a very dark hole and had visions of what my uncle did to me. And so this
Mm-hmm.
is the first moment that I had realized that I was abused deeper than what I had thought.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought this was my dad, mind you, right? Like, and also on top of that, Chris and I were literally in the middle of having sex when all these memories came back. And so
Right.
I was equating what happened to me with Chris. And there was like no distinction during that time period. And then there was just a lot going on. And this was like I don't, you know, I'm still very emotionally detached from what happened to me. I've had moments where like I've had very deep emotional releases from it, but like it still feels very detached. And so I
Mm-hmm.
use these
It feels
medicines to,
almost like it's almost like you're telling a story like you're watching or like you're reading a book about it happening to somebody else. It's like hard to be
that's,
like,
yeah,
oh, this is me. This is not,
it's
yeah.
exactly how it is even today. It's like I'm
Mm-hmm.
watching it happen to someone else, you
Mm-hmm.
know?
Yeah, I completely
Um,
relate.
and so I fell down a dark hole again emotionally because of that and started working very closely with my therapist. And I started using these medicines to dive deeper into what happened to me and to find healing and solace. Like, I luckily at this point I had found Jessa Reed's community. And so I had people that I could talk to about this that actually understood what I was experiencing in the sense of like they had had traumas come up on these medicines too. And so I was able to have conversations even with therapists that were like therapists for that medicinal treatment, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I was very lucky. And I had friends that also did like energetic healings with me. And so I had like some profound spiritual awakenings in 2021 and 2022. Um, and I made a lot of friends in that community. And um, yeah, I mean, I I had one experience pretty like probably a couple months after the memories came back where I used the medicines and I went into a meditative state. And this is about the time that I start only using those medicines for a meditative state, not for like a
Mm-hmm.
relationship building medication.
Right.
And so it was all internal work. And I had this profound spiritual experience where all of my guides were surrounding me. And they like had like I literally felt like I was floating in the air. They were like lifting me up in the air and they were allowing me while surrounded by love, allowing me to see what happened to me. Um, instead of just bits and pieces. I mean I still kind of bits and pieces, but I have like the greater picture of what the
Mm-hmm.
experience was. And I also came to the realization that this had happened to my uncle too,
Mm.
and that he was a victim too. and that
Right.
this was just like a life contract that we had.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so although it was this like big like acceptance, right? Like I
Mm-hmm.
had an acceptance moment at that time. That doesn't mean that it stayed. So
Right.
like I would go in and out of like accepting and being fucking angry,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I've I've had a lot of moments since then where I'm like triggered by my family because my family doesn't understand why I will not allow my uncle in my life.
Right.
And I decided this even before I knew what he did to me. I just like after I had my daughter, I had this like mini awakening of like, what am I doing allowing this fucking rapist around my child? Like,
Right.
what am I doing? Right. And so like I stopped going to family gatherings after I had my daughter. And my family was very mad at me, my grandma
Yeah.
specifically, you know. Um, and I I would go on in and out of these periods. I would like not really wanting to be around my family, blah 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 blah. But like I had the love and support I needed from my friends. I just didn't have it from my partner. My partner didn't believe me.
Yeah.
Okay. He thought that I had made this up in this experience, in this medicinal experience. He thought I had made it up and that it wasn't real and that I I don't know. He rightfully so had a lot of ideas that I was just I wanted to be a victim all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And to be fair, I was stuck in victimhood. And
Yeah.
I still struggle with that today,
Yeah.
right? I think
Yeah.
a lot of us struggle with it.
Yeah.
And so, but to have like my partner, the only thing I feel like I have, not believe me, fucked me up.
Yeah.
And so that moment, that night, shifted everything.
Everything. Yeah.
And so when I remember when I said I did a medicinal dose to find out what happened to me afterwards, I talked to
Mm-hmm.
Chris about it. And instead of comforting me and loving on me, he starts groping me. He
Which
wanted to
just
have
makes you
sex.
go.
Yeah. I'm like, I
Yeah.
don't think you understand the context of what I just experienced. I don't want this. Please don't do
Yeah.
that,
Don't
you
touch me. And I
know?
don't want to be touched right now. Yeah. I don't. Yeah.
Yeah. And I honestly right now I feel like I'm sharing too much information, but um so essentially like I luckily had the support of my therapist. I had this,
Mm-hmm.
she was curious of what I was experiencing. She wasn't awake, but I think like she was awakening,
Mm-hmm.
and I had the support of my friends, especially new friends that were awake already. And I had this like community of people that I could rely on, that I could grow with, And so I got really close to my friend Tiffany, and I met up with her for the first time in April of 2022.
She's
And
so
this,
beautiful. I love
she
her.
is, I know. So my craziness lasted about 6 months. So, like, by Christmas time of 2021, I was finally starting to calm down a little bit. It
Mm-hmm.
bled over a little bit into 2022, but I started focusing more on like letting go of the victimhood and like letting go of what had just transpired for the last year.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and moving more into like the higher vibrations and like healing my shit. But like my relationship with my partner was going downhill. As I grew up, we grew
You
down,
go down.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was just hoping that like the longer I held on, the better it would get. I found out in December, so right before Christmas, that he had been lying to me and using and all this kind of stuff. And like all of our money was gone. We couldn't even buy Christmas present for our daughter because he had spent it all on drugs. Like it was just bad, right?
Yeah.
And we ended up using credit cards to pay our bills and to buy Christmas presents. Like we shouldn't have done any of that, but we had to. Well, at least
Right.
we thought we had to, right? And so there was like a definite like break in trust and in my reality, because I also, he told me over and over again, nothing is wrong, everything is fine, stop acting
Right.
crazy,
Right.
just like pushed me off to the side,
And in
even though
every fiber of your being is like, no, danger, danger, Will Robinson. Something is happening. All of the red flags and
Yeah.
all of the triggers and everything. And it's like, yeah, it's that
Yeah.
total guess. And like Michael doesn't understand, and that's the exact reason why I constantly, not constantly, but often need like the verbal affirmations of what I'm feeling is like, right, because I'm like, I'm feeling everything is good and fine and whatever, but then you come to find out it's not. And I feel like it's the same thing when you feel like there's bad stuff going on, that you know something is happening, something's not right, and they're like, no, 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 it's just you. It's like, but
Hmm.
yeah, it's like,
But I
and there's
feel
no
it in my
connection.
bones,
Yeah,
you
it's like,
know?
but I know. And then you think, are you crazy? Am I
Yeah.
crazy? Am I just being paranoid? Am I a lunatic? Like,
Yeah. Questioning your intuition, questioning
yeah,
your reality.
question
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. That's
Yeah. No, that's where I was, you know, and like I'm still trying to learn how to trust my intuition because of how fucked up all of this was, right? And
mm-hmm.
so you know, we try to work on it, but I told him like if you use again, I'm done. Like if you lie to me again, I'm done. Right.
Right.
Like I can't do this anymore. I am losing myself, you know? And so come June, we're fighting a lot and we decide because I don't trust him still, he gets mad and we decide that we're gonna split up. So we split up for 2 weeks and we get back together and like again, my agreement is like if you lie to me again, I am done. And like mind you, I don't think he really lied to me in June. But like we just didn't have the trust there, you know, so it was just like
Mm-hmm.
constant fighting. And in between there, I'm doing all of this healing. I went to Chicago with Tiffany and I met up with her and I had this beautiful spiritual experiences with her. Like it was just a beautiful weekend. We saw like
Mm-hmm.
a psychic there. The psychic had said like you and your husband are gonna break up for or split up, separate for 6 months, but then you guys are gonna get back together and you're gonna live beautifully and all this kind of stuff. And I was just like, okay, you know, at this time, I didn't think it was going to work. Like, I was very
Right.
genuinely surprised by what she was saying, but like, I also was not ready to let go of the relationship. And so, anyways, we split up for 2 weeks in June. We get back together. And then I'm still doing my thing. Like I told him oh, this is the other thing of why we split up is like he would judge me for my spiritual practices. Like he would
Mm-hmm.
make fun of me essentially. He's like, oh, are you going to go charge your rocks? Like he would say it like that. You know what I mean? Like it, and it wasn't funny to me because I
Yeah.
was self-conscious about my spiritual practices,
Yeah.
right? Like I thought I was crazy sometimes, but like to have my
Mm-hmm.
partner say that just fucked me up, you know? And then
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
not believing me and like it was just everything. And so we get back together, we have like a beautiful experience, but I was just like, here are my ground rules. Don't lie to me. Don't use drugs. Come to me first before you want to use. We'll get you help. And I said, we need to go to couples therapy. And also, don't judge me for my spiritual practices, right? All of that. I mean, maybe the drugs part wasn't starting yet, but everything else started within 2 weeks of us getting back together. But I was already stuck in that like abusive cycle of like
The loop.
staying
You were
the
back in the
loop.
loop.
I was already back in the loop. And so because he said all the right things, right? And then
Mm-hmm.
I got right back into it.
Mm-hmm.
And unbeknownst to me, I went so he goes on this salmon fishing trip every year. And sometimes I will go up there and camp with him for a couple of days and just spend some time up there. And so we went up there, me and Raina and the dogs. Oops, shouldn't have said the name. Okay, my daughter and the dogs. And I start seeing 999 everywhere. I'd never seen that repetitive of a number. I mean, I've seen repetitive numbers, right? But like I'd never seen nines. And I was like, what's this? Right? I didn't really put two and two together yet. But a couple of months goes by and this is October 30th of 2022. I put on like we just had a beautiful, wonderful day, awesome sex. Like it was a great day, right? I put on his jacket to go put the chickens away. And I like put my hands in my pockets to keep them warm because it was cold outside. And I reach in and there's Benadryl in the pocket. And I was kind of like flashing by every time I found Benadryl in the house. Again, I'm like, why does he have so much fucking Benadryl? He doesn't even have allergies. Why does he have Benadryl? You know? And something said, check the other pockets. So I reach into another pocket, pull out a bottle of kratom, the drug he had been using. And I understand that
Mm.
some people use this drug normally and it's no big deal. But for our family, it was devastating.
I don't know.
He,
I'm not even sure I know what it is.
kratom is like a synthetic heroin, essentially.
Oh, okay.
It can be used in different ways. It can be
Yeah.
used as uh like if you take small amounts of it, it can be helpful for your brain function. It can be helpful for pain. There's a lot of
Okay.
different strains of it.
Gotcha.
Um,
But like
but he
anything,
would
when you abuse it.
he would abuse the fuck out of it. And
Yeah.
so I go back into the house and I say, "What's this? How long have you been using?" And he tried to lie and he said, "Every once in a while for the last couple of months." And I said, "Okay, you always lie to me when I come to you and I found like proof that you've done something wrong. So let's try that again and tell me, how long have you been using?" And he's like, "Every single day since salmon fishing camp." Remember when I
Mm,
was seeing the 999? He started
interesting.
using that week.
Interesting.
And so my guides were trying to speak to me and say, this is the end of the cycle. This is the end of it,
Yeah.
you know?
And I vaguely remember because we started talking about that time. And so I
Mhm.
vaguely kind of remember when some of that was happening. So
Yeah.
like we had just kind of started talking. Um, I have to pee. We're at the over the 2 hour mark and my
Oh,
bladder's going,
shit. I have to pee
ma'am.
too.
You know what's so funny is that when we started talking about doing these, we thought you could get your story done in like 30, 45 minutes. And I'm like, I don't know if I can squeeze mine in like an hour. Bitch,
Yeah, I feel
what
like
happened to 30, 45 minutes?
I
Just
know.
saying.
Well, I think I put in a lot more details than I anticipated doing,
Yeah.
but
I felt like it's you needed to release. I felt like it was information you needed to get out and wanted to put out there for whatever
yeah.
reason. That somebody it's information that somebody needs to hear. But right now, my bladder needs to release. Can we
All
just
right. So
pause and come
I don't,
back?
oh, pause. And we're back.
And yay! With empty bladders.
So sorry this is taking so long. So if you've made it this far, thank you for
Thank
listening to my story. Um, but so essentially, I was devastated. Um, there was a lot of situations prior to that that made me question if he was using again, just like his behavior, the fact that we were losing so much money and we couldn't pay our bills again. It was just all the same things. And I
anyone
questioned
that has
him.
addicts in their lives completely can understand completely.
Yeah, there was obvious signs, but I didn't have physical proof. So, and he made me feel very guilty for accusing him of ever
For
lying to him,
questioning him
for
and yeah,
questioning him. Yeah.
yeah.
So it was very typical addict behavior. But
Ooh,
it was like to a point where
it's
like
11:11
literally,
on my end.
ooh, it's
One
literally at a
minute it's gonna
point,
be 12:12 on your end.
it is 12:12. Um,
It's 12:12.
so so I was questioning my reality in every aspect, right?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know what was true anymore, what was false. And, uh, I even started questioning my own spirituality. I just started questioning everything. And I decided that night, like I had told him at first, I said, we are separated as of right now. You're going to go stay with your mom. And in my mind was that reading back in April, right? Um, but I went upstairs and I was just fuming and I said, "No, you can't do this anymore. You cannot
Yeah.
do this anymore." And so I went back downstairs and I said, "Actually, we're getting a divorce. I am done. I can't do this anymore." And it was probably the most difficult decision I've ever had to make in my life because I loved this man and I still do. I still love him very
Yeah.
much. And I know his soul. That's the thing is I know his soul and I know that we have traveled through lifetimes together. But I was losing myself. I had lost myself, in this relationship, and I didn't know who I was anymore. I
Mhm.
didn't know who he was anymore. And I was broken. I was definitely beyond broken. I remember he left for work the next day because it was Sunday. He left for work the next day. My mom came and picked up my daughter and took her to her house because I just couldn't be a mom. I
Mhm.
sat on the couch and I cried for days. I
Yeah.
just cried. I stared at the wall. I dissociated. I was in and out of disassociation. I was broken. Um, and Thursday, I left Michigan and I went down to Indiana and spent time with Tiffany. And um, I was okay for that weekend, but then I came back and I was exactly the same. And I'm frantically trying to figure out what to do next. Where do I go? Who do I talk to? I have no job at this point. Like I lost my job after my concussion. I couldn't go back to work. I had no job. I had none of my own money at all. The only money I ever made was through tarot readings and mediumship. I kind of left out a little details of the in between, but like I went to Hot Alien Summer Camp, or at the time it was Alien School Field Trip, and I learned how to practice mediumship. And so I did that on donation base, and then I was doing readings for pay. And so that was the only money I had. I was also practicing some other things that I'm not going to talk about on here that were very degrading to me, but like my partner was okay with it at the time. So I did that. And I just had so much trauma flailing up through my entire body. And I, I don't know, I stayed living there for about a month. On the weekends when he was home, I would leave. He would take care of our daughter, and I would go somewhere else for the weekend. And it only lasted about a month or a month and a half before I said, okay, I need to go. And so I had to like find new homes for our dogs, which was really devastating. And I can't really touch on that because it still breaks my heart today. Luckily, like one of our dogs is with a family member, so if like either one of us ever want her back, we can. But like our other dog, Nick's, like he just lives in this like terrible situation, and but like nobody would take him because he wasn't very well trained, and that was our fault, and I have a lot of guilt about that. I should have given him to like a guy who trains German shepherds for a living and like rehomes them, because I just have a lot of regrets about where he had to go, but I was on such a time crunch. I didn't know what else to do, and this is the only person that offered to take him.
Yeah.
So anyways, I moved back to my mom's, and I was shattered. I knew I needed to
Mhm.
find a job because I needed money, and I did not want to depend on him financially anymore. I like realized that he had used finances over my head for a really long time. Like he would blame me for our money loss, but in reality, he was buying drugs.
Mhm.
And so like I just didn't want to financially depend on him anymore. And so I found a job, and that was miserable. I'm a projector, so like doing like physical manual labor is not for me.
And you were up at the ass crack of dawn.
I
Oh.
was up so early. I had to wake up at 3:30 in the morning every day, but I was busting my ass, like
Mhm.
I was trying to get my life on track. And
You did it. You did good. I mean,
yeah.
just being, I just met you in August 2022.
Mhm.
So, and when we met at camp, it was, it was you and Tiffany, and then Tiffany kind of like, and then you and I had met a few times, and then like Tiffany and I were constantly talking, and I feel like it was sometime around October, maybe November. So it was right around when you were split. You were just moving into your mom's, I think, that we really started talking,
Mhm.
and really becoming friends. And just the growth, and just to see how much you have healed and how much you have grown has been so beautiful and so wonderful. And I'm just so thankful that, you were brought in my life and that I've got to see you on this journey
Yeah.
because it's very inspiring and you're doing a beautiful job. I know it doesn't feel like it. And I know that you just feel like you're failing sometimes, but you're not.
Yeah,
You're doing a beautiful
it's
job.
hard because like I see myself day to day, right? And so I see these like same behaviors that I've lived through my whole life, like right now,
Mm-hmm.
just like the insecurities and the anxious attachment and stuff like that. Like, those were things that I did when I was young. And like, so, but I
But
know
we're able
that
to realize it now. I mean, and the
yeah,
thing is that I'm so grateful that I love is that you are able to figure it out before you're 30 and start correcting and addressing these things, as opposed to like me. I didn't start figuring this out until I was in my 40s. And now I'm like, oh, like if I would have known all of this, stuff before. So we're continually evolving and continually growing, and we're going to continue to slip back into patterns. Even though there's things that I'm completely consciously aware of now, there's still times that I slip back into patterns and slip back into, I'm with Michael, with my partner, I feel more safe and secure and at home than anybody I have ever in my life. Like I'm not, I shouldn't have anything to worry about, but I still like freak out on them sometimes, and I'm like,
yeah,
I don't know where that's coming from. Sorry. So it's like, there's always going to be something. And it's kind of like, as soon as you get one thing fixed, it's going to be something else. It's kind of like
yeah,
having a house. There's constantly going to be a project. There's constantly going to be something that you got to look at and improve on. And as we're
yeah.
changing, there's going to be new things. So I don't know. I just been very beautiful, and I feel very honored to be your friend in this journey.
Thanks. I think
Mm,
like, like I think I would make strides when I was married, like about different realizations, but like he held me back a lot, you
yeah,
know? And I didn't have the freedom to like do these like inner working journeys and like
yeah.
so like now I'm like involved in like I go to like sound bath healings, I go to, shamanic experiences, and I'm having profound shifts in
Hmm.
the last, what has it been now?
Year.
8 months,
Oh yeah, in the
10
last eight
months,
months
10
for sure.
months,
Yeah,
10
yeah,
months, like
definitely.
I've had profound shifts in who I am and how I
Hmm.
process things and how I go about the world, how I talk to people. Like I'm definitely very different than I was. But it's
It's just.
hard, like when you're in the day to day, you don't realize how much you've changed until you have somebody like you who's seen me change so much,
Hmm.
or even somebody who's known me for, like, I have a friend that's pretty woo, and I talk to her about this stuff all the time, and she's known me since high school, and she's like, "You're a
Hmm.
completely different person," you know?
Yeah, yeah,
But it's hard to see that when you are the person.
yeah.
And I beat myself up all the time. That's one of the things that I'm working through right now is the insecurities, but also like
Hmm.
the way that I talk to myself, the self
Hmm.
love. I'm trying to find, unconditional love for myself. And here's Yoshi giving me unconditional love. Would you pet the
Hmm.
boy?
It's like there's
Um,
certain times that he has come over like literally on cue. He's like, "Oh,
yeah,
she just needs a hug. Let me go sit in her lap." Just like there's
yeah.
been like three different times that he's like,
He's in
"Oh,
sync with
okay."
me, dude. It's crazy. Like I said,
He
I've had
is.
him pretty
He's your
much since I got sober.
he's
And
your
so
familiar.
he is
Well,
for
he's your
sure.
familiar.
Yeah.
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 So
So
yeah, but I think
yeah.
that like what you were saying about the growth and stuff, it's like I feel like maybe it's one of those things like when somebody's losing weight and they don't see like they know like the pounds coming off, but they don't see it physically until
Yeah.
somebody looks at it because they don't like,
They're like, "Oh, are you
I think
losing weight?" I'm like,
and
"Yeah,
you're like,
actually,
oh,
but I
okay.
can't tell.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So I
it's
think
the
it's kind
same
of
way.
mm-hmm. Yeah, it's
So,
a process.
and now, like right now, I'm still in the process of like learning to trust my own intuition again.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm still deprogramming how often I was lied to and told I was crazy, or told that I don't remember it correctly, or just
Mm-hmm.
something like
Yeah.
I think he would use my memory loss against me, and he would
Yep.
use my mental disorders against me,
Yep.
and
Yep.
so he did for sure, because he would like bring up, well, that's just your borderline, or you don't
Yeah.
remember things
Yeah.
correctly, or like, so I was, I was gaslit all the
Yeah,
time,
all the
and
time.
so I struggle with trusting my own intuition. And that's why I haven't been doing readings lately. But if anyone's listening to this and they want a reading, let me know.
Where
Um,
can and with that, where can everybody find you, Kens?
okay. So I do have a new website. It's moonmamashop.com. And you can contact me through there. I do have an email address as well. It's Kenzie at moonmamashop.com. Otherwise, you can find me on social media. On Instagram, it's moonmamashop. So yeah. I also have a
Yeah.
TikTok, which is Moon Mama Shop. I try to keep everything the same so that you don't get confused.
Mm,
Um, but yeah, I mean, eventually I want to own my own metaphysical shop, and I've had that desire for a while now, like a year and a half. But right now I'm just working through like the self-worth part, and like, is this
mhm,
really what I want to do? I know, like, I also have a really big desire to work with like as a birthing doula.
mhm,
I know it's like really random, but like I had a birthing doula when I was pregnant, and I would love to be a birthing doula. But yeah, I mean, I want to own my own metaphysical shop, and I want to be able to like do readings every day if that's what, a customer comes in and they want a reading. I want to be able to do that. I want to
mhm,
build a community within that too. I want to have a space where we can have classes and gatherings and stuff. And I want to have like separate rooms for Reiki practitioners. And if I decide this is something I want to do, I will do that, and it's going to be a beautiful experience. So yeah.
yeah. Well, beautiful. Yay. Well, thanks for joining us, guys. I think we're going to bounce out of here. Tune into the next episode where we talk about my crazy journey and how I got here with all the things.
Ooh, I'm excited.
I wouldn't be. All
Yeah.
right.
Well,
We'll see. We'll see how it goes. Yeah.
are you?
But yeah, it is interesting. It's definitely been a journey. And it'll be the first time I'm like, I think fully just kind of putting everything out there too. So it'll
Mhm.
be interesting.
Yeah, it's the
So
first time I've told my story in like 5 years. So
thanks
sorry it
for
was so
sharing.
long.
No, thanks for sharing. I mean, so yeah, so this podcast is just going to be about all the things that we realize, all the things that we go, huh, all the things that brought us here, and yeah, all of it, all the things
Hopefully
of
we
all the
can
things.
like go into detail too about like how we healed those things eventually. I know it just kind of, even though it was 2 hours long, I grazed over a lot, like a lot,
I
especially
think we
about my
will.
awakening.
I think
Yeah.
there's so many things that we have parallels on that I think other people out there are definitely struggling and dealing with too. That I think that there's definitely things that we can, pick topics or whatever, just dive deeper into certain things that are affecting us that I'm sure are affecting other people too.
Mhm.
A lot of the
Yeah.
podcasts that I listen to, it's like, oh, other people are feeling the same way, thinking the same thing, asking the same questions.
Right.
So yeah. All right.
Yeah.
All right. We'll talk to you soon. Love
Love
y'all.
you. Bye.
Bye.